Okay, so we're talking about, I was giving coffee as an example of how the church allowed a narrative to be spun among its members to the point that its universities wasn't even selling, without any direction from the leadership, the universities weren't selling caffeinated beverages because Mormons have this doctrine that they can't drink coffee. It's a trite example when you compare it to why black people were denied the priesthood. Like, that's a big fucking deal. But they handled both those things, you can see, in the same way. They didn't come out and say, hey, it's all good. These stories that you guys were making up about why you can't drink caffeinated beverages, none of those are true. They didn't come right out and say it. They didn't come right out and say, for 37 years between the time they gave blacks the priesthood and they explained that they never should have not had the priesthood. During that 37 years, they were silent on why the priesthood was taken. They were kind of misleading us. I believe I was misled. Not only by cultural dogma or cultural narratives, but also some of the things the leadership was saying. So now we ask ourselves, okay, how are they doing now? And in our time right now, where we're being fed a lot of misinformation, whether you believe or don't believe in the so-called big lie of Trump losing the election because of fraud or it being stolen, or some misinformation about what Facebook is doing or about Amazon.
I want to talk about something for a while to give a little more foundation to this. So, I believe that the 10 Commandments are pretty simple.
They're super simple.
Super simple.
Thou shalt not steal.
Yeah.
It's like that.
And then I believe that
thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or whatever,
yeah,
right? It's pretty easy.
I believe that the Bible and all the stories are based in people having doubt and giving a bunch of answers that they're doing it. I think there's agendas involved in a lot of stuff that's putting in and what was omitted from the Bible by the church. So a lot of times when we see the tip of the iceberg for a lot of these different things, it's important to pull back and say, okay, why are they doing that? So a lot of times,
what's the reasoning behind
what's
this?
The reasoning and we've all been in a situation when we say stuff, somebody's like doing it, and all of a sudden we say something, and then they start talking and filling in the gaps for what it is, and then we're like, oh shit, I'm off the hook. Because I mean, it's, I don't believe you can live in this world being 100% truthful and everything. It's like, oh, you're stupid, like all that different stuff. It's like you have to. All communities, I believe, share truths and lies.
Yeah, I mean, here's a really trite example, but I still think it's applicable. If some dude walks by and says, hey, give me your fucking money, I think in that moment I might lie and be like, I don't have any.
Yeah.
That's a lie. But like, to your point, how do you get through life without sometimes lying? I mean, I think we can forgive ourselves for that.
Yeah, for sure.
So like that narrative, the Bible, what you were just talking about, the commandments, whatever. Yeah, some of that stuff was people sitting around and trying to make sense of the world. Kind of like sitting by the pond and trying to make sense of why some people can approach the turtles and some can't. Making sense of why blacks didn't get the priesthood or why we can't drink caffeinated soda.
I think a lot of times one of the apostles was asking Jesus, Jesus was just telling a story. And the message was for John. And Jesus is talking cryptic, telling the story and everything. And John's like sitting there. It's like, oh yeah, the people need to hear this.
Yeah.
But Jesus is like, fuck man, the story was for
maybe
you
need to hear it. Yeah, totally, I agree.
And then that passes down and nobody's doing anything. Everybody's just preaching.
Right. Instead of taking it for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, so when it comes to misinformation, for me, the reason I'm telling this big convoluted history of the church is because I think there's a lot that we can learn from that I've learned from that, on how to, one, recognize that what I believe is my story, and two, my story might not be true or might not be the whole truth. And if it isn't, then there's something more I can learn, and my life can get better.
It's one of the big benefits I get out of meditating.
Right? That's the point.
Yeah.
Because then you become present, and you're outside yourself a little bit, and you can examine things without the lens. I think you meditate much more than me, and you're more experienced at it, I'm sure. But what I've gathered out of meditating is that, to an extent, I can remove some of my lenses through which I see the world. Some of my narratives fall away, and I can consider it without the narrative. So if I fast forward now, I was just looking at this stuff yesterday. Some of you guys are probably like, dude, nobody gives a shit about this Mormon stuff. But it's really interesting. Today, I just Googled a couple days ago, what are some statements from the LDS Church about blacks in the priesthood? And I found this, I found a bunch of their websites and their things, a lot of platitudes saying how great they are and that they're okay with it. Again, I think they're misinforming. They're steering. You won't find in that Google search a link to race in the priesthood, to their essay.
Yeah.
You got to really look for that. But you do find this lesson that's in one of their lesson manuals that presumably people give in church from time to time in different classes. And one of the things says right here, for the teacher to point out the line that states, church records offer no clear insights into the origins of this practice, i.e. taking priesthood away from black people. That's bullshit. That's a lie. There are church records that if you read through them, you can easily learn why the church, you might have to infer some things, but for them to say that there are no church records that take this away or that explain this policy is disingenuous and definitely misleading. So I'll give you one example. Today, in the Book of Mormon, still canonized scripture for the church. You can look this up if you want, because I think everyone needs to know that this is still in Mormon scripture, which means it is Mormon doctrine, because the Book of Mormon, according to the church, is the most true and correct book on earth. It is God's word to the Mormons. Okay. 2 Nephi chapter 5, like verse 26 or something. You'll find it if you look. In 2 Nephi chapter 5, it says explicitly that brown people with dark skin, have that skin because of a curse from God, because of their iniquity, because of their sin.
Yeah.
And because of the sins of their parents, of their fathers. And that those people are lazy, or the word they use is idle. I think it says mischievous. And a little bit mischievous, like the rest of us. And that if they mix with the seed of the white people, it will lead to the destruction of the white people. That's just blatantly racist. And it is in the Book of Mormon still to this day. And I just read you from the church's manual, no church records offer clear insights into the origins of this practice. Well, is that not one of the origins of the practice among Mormons? It's in the Book of Mormon, which was published, I think, in 1830 or something like that. So, at the first few years of the church. So yeah, that's misinformation. So then for me, and I would love to know what you think, knowing that type of misinformation is still out there. I'm just giving one example, my former church. They've been doing it for a couple hundred years. They're still doing it today. And the key to misinformation is that they're gaslighting you. They're telling you that they're not misinforming you. They're blatantly saying, no, there aren't any church records that give us the origins of this, when there are, and they know there are. And so my question for you is, how can we take that knowing that organizations like my church, organizations, we could say the Republican Party, we could say the Democratic Party, we could say Apple or Google or whatever, or Elon Musk, right? Like, maybe, I'm not saying they are misinforming us. I'm saying, how can we find out if they are, and what can we do if it isn't in fact the case that we are being misled?
So, I make the assumption that I am being misled. to a
Wow.
certain extent. I try
You
not
just
to,
start
I
from
try
there.
not to buy into my own propaganda,
Your own narrative.
on my own narrative on things, and I'm not 100% on that, but I think every ounce that we do this is important. So there's a thing that I do. I'm a Bob Marley impersonator, and one of the things that I do is I do it to show people an example of how you can manipulate information, and then I also do it to like widen people's minds. So it's based on a theory that, and I totally made it up, that Bob Marley was gay. So I start off with Bob. A lot of people don't know that Bob Marley was half Jamaican and half white, and a lot of people also don't know that he was gay. So the first part was true. Then I put something on top that's not true. And then people are kind of like thinking, and then I go, the song "We're Jammin'" was originally about his boyfriend Benjamin, but they made him change it. Benjamin, I hope you like Benjamin too. So then I've like put several layers. So I started with true, and then all of a sudden I'm using like art, and then they're like more focused on
And
that.
you're using his voice.
Yeah. And then people are starting to channel into that and believe it.
And it makes sense.
It makes
Benjamin's
total sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
All of a sudden
It's like all of a sudden you're like, then it's something that they've heard for many, many years, and then all of a sudden it's just holy shit, and then they can't decipher when they're hearing the song. That's how misinformation works. So we all are involved in it, and lying has something to do with survival.
Yeah, it's in our DNA. For sure.
It's in our and a lot of things on whether something is with your biology, that we're here and our cells know how to survive, or what or biology, or if it's a social construct. A lot of it has to do with survival. I'm noticing with my mom, she's getting on in years, and she lies a lot of times to protect her independence.
Yeah, like I'm still good to drive kind of stuff.
That in that realm. And the question is, I think she's good to do a lot of these things, but because she's lying, I don't know when she is and when it is not. And I have a good intuition, but it takes a lot of energy to figure out if people are lying. It takes a lot of energy. Like sometimes it'll take an hour meditation for me to like go, because
come to the truth.
Because because you could lie so much. You could lie so much that it's just like it takes a lot of bandwidth to figure out if somebody's lying or not.
And I would say it takes a toll on your emotional and your cycle, probably all of your health, because you are. I mean, for me, trying to figure out again, I started to recognize in my 20s, but really heavily in my early to mid 30s, that my church was lying to me.
Yeah.
And then I spent a lot of time, man, trying to figure out when they were and when they weren't lying.
You got to be willing to say, I used to call it spiritual retardation.
Okay.
Which I don't know, it was an example that I used, that all my life I saw life like this, but now I see it like this. Are you willing to like all of a sudden see things differently?
It another way, yeah.
Are you willing to take a look at, am I willing to take a look at that? Maybe my Bob Marley impersonation isn't as good as I think it is. Maybe like my formula isn't as good as I think it is. And I think delving into like all of a sudden, I think that's why kids for the most part are so happy. Because they have to continually grow, because
they're just accepting everything.
They're accepting everything, but also they're willing to see the world in a different way, because they're dancing with life more than us trying.
They haven't created all of the narratives yet that tell them how to see the world.
Correct. And they're taking a lot of them in subconsciously too, which might be like as tapping more into their biology. Somebody made this example, and I'm surprised it never came across, but with like, they're talking about psychedelics, and there's like, yeah, psychedelics help you act like a kid.
I can see that.
And that's why I don't like being high around kids.
Yeah,
like it feels like weird being high around kids.
I get that. I haven't been high in a long time, but I remember that same feeling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that all comes back to me and makes me think.
Wait, quick. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think you
Okay.
did. And that's what I was gonna say. Like, what did Jesus say? See these children, like be humble like a child.
Yeah.
I think is what he said, and that's probably why. It's because he's saying, I mean, what was Jesus doing? He was undoing the narratives that his culture had created, like that you couldn't take a certain number of steps on the Sabbath. If you stayed under this certain number, the road to Jericho, the reason that they could walk to Jericho on Sunday is because they had to work on Monday or the day after the Sabbath, whatever day that was. And they could walk to Jericho and stay there that night, and it was under the prescribed amount of steps so that they were still keeping the Sabbath. And Jesus came and was like, you guys are missing the fucking point. Like, be like a child. Stop seeing things through this lens.
And I believe the misinformation that the church sells that with the be humble like a child as having blind faith.
Yeah, they do that too.
Yeah.
But that might not have been what Jesus was saying.
I believe that.
Jesus might have been saying, be a kid.
See the world with fresh eyes.
Yes.
Like my car has sayings all above, so people are looking up because only children look up, and that's probably why children, for the most part, don't have back problems because they're moving.
Because they're using their body.
Yeah, they're using their body. I remember my ex's child one time. I was like going to her. I was like, "Oh, you're about to fall asleep." She was like, "It's energy at night," and I'm trying to hypnotize her. "Oh, you're about to fall asleep. You're getting really tired," and she's like, she gets into a karate stance.
She's not buying it.
She threw the other side of it. She's like, "I'm gonna get more energy."
Yeah, I think that what you offered and what we're talking about is great advice. You just start from a place where you're not believing your own shit. You're not, and I had to learn how to do that, and I'm still learning. So, for example, I'm a law student. Just finished my first year in May, and I was a straight A student in my undergraduate work. I did 2 degrees way back in the day, straight A's. And I went into law school. Yeah, exactly. I went into law school thinking I'm a straight A student. I'm not anymore, or I'm not at law school.
Yeah.
And that was a narrative, dude. It was hard. I had to break that down, and I was resisting week after week, month after month. Like, no, this can't be right. I'm a straight A student. I get fucking straight A's. I'm a genius. I'm the smartest fucking dude in the room, right? And I had to finally, when I got my grades after the first semester, I did okay, but I did not get straight A's. I had to look at myself. More importantly, I had to look at the story I was telling myself and ask, is that true? And the answer obviously was, not now. Okay, so now what am I going to do about it? And your answer was a good one. What if I would have gone into my first semester of law school thinking, I don't know if I'm a straight A student or not? What if I didn't have that construct or narrative weighing, because it was weighing me down. The truth is, it doesn't matter. It's okay that I'm not a straight A student. But when I went into law school, I thought the sky was falling if I wasn't getting A's. And it made to your point, I was suffering because of that. In fact, I think I probably would have done better had I gone into it without that story. So the misinformation thing, the way that ties back into misinformation, is I do think it's a valuable exercise to be curious enough to just ask questions about the way you're seeing the world and the way people are presenting the world to you. Because it might be good, it might be not. It might be true, it might be not. And I think we're better people. I feel like I'm a better person and I suffer less when I'm curious and I just ask, is this true? Does it matter if it's true? What do I want to take from this?
For sure. So some of the information that was taken from the Bible or the books of Thomas, and they were found
the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Dead Sea Scrolls. And basically the first name for God was I am. And I'm really big into I am affirmations. Affirming
I am strong.
Those type of words I have. I am compassion.
Sure.
and things and
graceful
messages.
Whatever. Yeah.
So they talk about how when Jesus was saying, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," he's talking about "I am," not himself.
God is the way, the truth.
Because sometimes when people talk about Jesus, I think they're talking about some really insecure dude that wants credit for everything.
I know, right? Like, that is so true. Like the God of the Old Testament, like, why does he give a shit if we worship him? I mean, the heaven that some of us have been taught is like, we're gonna die, and if we're worthy here on earth, then we're gonna go sing praises to God all day. And I'm like, I'm a dad. I do not want my kids singing praises to me. Like, go do your own shit. I'm gonna go surfing, right? Like, you're right. And the God of the Old Testament's also maniacal, right? Like, he turned Sarah into salt. They had to leave their city. I think it was Sodom and Gomorrah. They had to leave the city because it was so wicked. And they were told by God, if I remember correctly, that they had to leave the city. And like, I imagine me or my wife, we had to leave Salt Lake City to come here. Like, we looked back a lot. We always looked back to where we were leaving. We were like, oh man, this is really hard. We're leaving our home. We're leaving our friends. We're leaving our family. Sarah looked back over her shoulder at the home she was fleeing, and God turned her to salt. I'm like, that's some fucked up shit. Like, that's a maniacal God. I'm not trying to knock anyone's belief in God, in the Christian God. I'm saying that there are some stories, there are some narratives that we've bought into that maybe aren't very helpful, or that maybe aren't true. It doesn't mean that the religion isn't true, or that the Bible's not true, or that God isn't real. It just means that we can look at it another way.
And I think that Judaism is really good at questioning.
They're so good at it. I think it's because they've been around so long as a religion. Like, I think of my Mormon faith. It was organized in 1830, I think. So they're 200 years old. That is a very, very, very new church comparative to others.
I don't know. I could go back and forth. I would say that there's more sustainability, but there's also more control. Like, let's talk about the Catholic Church. It's been around as
2,000
long,
years, right?
And maybe they hide their stuff a little, but it's got crazy things just like that. I've heard Scientologists use that excuse that you're talking about.
They're a new church.
Yeah, and I'm not saying
I don't think it's a good excuse.
Yeah,
it doesn't excuse their behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
No.
And I didn't think you were justifying it in any way.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure you.
But why is it that the Jews have got so much figured out? Because it feels like they do. Like,
I think it's part of the culture.
Mm.
Because it's
like, you can have an atheist Jew that goes to synagogue, and people are like, "That's cool."
I don't like when people are questioning. Sometimes, like, stuff sneaks up on me and people are questioning something, and like, I'm like on my spiritual high horse that I know more than them and everything. But also, why I'm feeling my body tighten up, I also know that that's wrong. That's what the humility I have.
Yeah, you're aware.
Yeah. I'm
because
aware.
of
Not 100%
meditation.
of the time. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Because of your meditation.
No, you're gonna ask a question.
Oh, I was gonna say, why do you think that your body? Why, when somebody challenges our story or our belief, why does it upset us? Whether we're aware of that or whether it's just a constriction in our body, why do you think that is?
It's survival. Those stories are survival. Going back to that these beliefs give a certain level of status. These beliefs, give us a lot of different things. I mean, for just the fact that I'm a Bob Marley impersonator, for some reason that I'm more believable to people in certain things.
Sure.
And Jedi Steve is a narrative that I've created that he leverages that just to draw people in more. But for the most part, if you listen to most of my stuff, you gotta fill in the gaps, and you gotta find your way, and you gotta question the things that I'm saying, because I'm coming from a place that of I am that I'm trying to figure this shit out.
You don't know.
I don't know. That's a good place to be in there. And sometimes I come a little stronger, but then on the end, I'm good at paying attention and to people around me and listening and trying to have an understanding of people. Like the other day, somebody honked at me, and I had a passenger in the car. I do Lyft, and I had a passenger in the car, and I was like, I turned over the passenger, and I was like, yeah, that's one of my fans. I was like, yeah, I'm surprised they didn't want an autograph. So that narrative I created didn't give me stress that somebody's honking.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that a lot of the reason that we get so upset when our beliefs or our narratives or the story we've been telling ourselves gets challenged is what you just said, it's survival. And I think that humans, we as a species, if you want to look at it that way, it's super valuable to know. And the example that I use a lot that I think of is 15,000 years ago, we're living in the wilderness, and it is good for us as a tribe, let's say there's 100 of us, it's good for us to know and to teach to everyone else, there's a bear over there. That's where the bear lives. That's his den right there. Because then we know, don't go over there, because the bear is dangerous, and we know. But you imagine, we don't know where the bear's den is. The bear could be anywhere. That's scary, and rightfully so. Because if you know where the bear is, you can stay away from it. If you don't know, you might get attacked or eaten and be dead. And so I think that it is innate for us to want to know. We try to make sense of things. We try to make sense of why we can't drink coffee. We try to make sense of why blacks couldn't have the priesthood. And
one of the things that you're talking about earlier is like curiosity. And you ever heard the saying, curiosity killed the cat?
Yes. Yeah. Curiosity is a scary thing. Because now you're looking into something.
Is it really?
It can be, right? Because think, I don't know where the bear is, so I'm going to get curious and go try to figure out where the bear is. And in the process, I might run into the bear.
So a while ago, I was at this Starbucks. Early on in my spirituality, I was at this Starbucks. And this little kid was in there, and he's like, the mom's like, oh, you got to put your shoes on so we can go into this place. And the kid's like, why? It's like, oh, because we'll get in trouble, you'll get arrested, or whatever. These lies that our parents tell us to do it, which to a certain extent, it keeps the kid on the side. It keeps a 2-year-old from just running in the street. You got to create a bunch of lies for that kid. There's safety. But the problem is when the 33-year-old me is trying to start a business, but I'm afraid to go into the street. But I don't even know this because it's part of my beliefs. It's part of my belief system type stuff. And trust me, I drive around all the time. There's some motherfuckers that should be scared of just like walking in the street that aren't.
Right.
There's like I joke. I was like, look at that person wearing all black. It's always the people that are jaywalking, just walking
in the middle of the night wearing all black.
Wearing all black. And it's like they're like, I just imagine them. This is a narrative I create. I just imagine them getting dressed as like, oh, I'm gonna just wear all black because I'm gonna be crossing the street late at night.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So one of the things back with that little kid, he had some shoes on that said "Born Free."
Mm.
So we're born free,
and then
all we to survive. Like some of those lies are
survival.
Good to do it, but how do we unwind all that narrative in order to live our truth?
And I think you nailed it. One way is to meditate, think about it, try to go into your daily interactions and your daily thoughts with yourself from the perspective of, I don't know.
One of the things I used to love when I was going to a meeting that I would walk there and I would just be arguing points back and forth with the person that I go. And then when I get there, I just let go.
I love that.
And I notice a lot of business people, they walk into coffee shops and they're using their intuition to figure out what table to sit at. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the meeting stops, they cut off their intuition. Mm. And I think that's the message with Darth Vader is that going to the dark side is just being a brain and cutting off everything in your body.
That's such a good point, which you should not do.
But if I want to control you, if I'm the church or if I'm a business or if I'm
Any
a cult,
organization or a person.
I want you to like buy into this stuff because it keeps you from that Book of Thomas, that your Kundalini, the Christ energy is going through you. Buddha means your enlightenment. Christ means the same thing.
Sure.
And it means that instead of just living in your head, you're living throughout your 7 chakras. In the world, but not of the world. The cross represents, this is spiritual connection, and this is like the man-made world. This is in the world.
Of the world?
But not of the world.
Not of the world.
Not of the world.
In the world.
And then the Holy Ghost, there's a Starbucks. How are you doing?
I have to leave in a couple of minutes.
Okay. There's a Starbucks. There's a Starbucks by my old house, and I used to walk up the streets, and there was a crow that would fly for 2 weeks straight. It seemed like it was every day. Would land on the cross and just would be crowing. So we have the spiritual connection, we have this, and then we have the Holy Spirit of dying to every moment. And that's what meditation helps. And there's other things. There's walking, maybe working out, maybe jogging, but the intention has to do it. It can be playing with Play-Doh. So you see the world with fresh eyes. I used to have this affirmation: I wake up in every moment with a blank canvas and momentum.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I think meditation gets us there. I think putting a reminder in your phone every day, maybe, that goes off once a day or twice a day, that says, hey, question everything, or be curious, or,
I have that thing that I also did for the police. It was started with SDSU, breathing for peace.
Yeah.
So every time you hear the chimes around you, bells, I'm inhaling peace, I'm exhaling peace, and that's a reset based on our spiritual contracts. Like a lot of times, like a spiritual contract for me was, my parents said they'd pay for college just as long as I'm a contributing member of society.
Yeah,
that seems like an ezy contract.
Right.
Like I didn't say, oh, what does that mean?
You just went about it.
Yeah, what that meant is, when I'm in my late 30s and I have dreadlocks, that's bad. It was like they could change like the writing in the contract, because I just signed a contract that so there's a lot of spiritual contracts that based on survival, that your family is
imposing
on you, and society does the same thing.
I agree. All right, I have to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Love
Thank
you,
you very
brother.
much.
Bye, everyone.